When you learn to detach and let go, it will completely and utterly change your life overnight. Welcome back to another episode. My name is Rick, and my main goal is to help you realize the truth that feeling great is your natural state. Today, we're going to be focusing on the topic of love and attachment and how learning to let go can completely and utterly change your life in ways which you never would have thought possible before. So whenever you think of attachment, whenever we think of attachment, we probably most likely think of a relationship between people, friends, family, partners, things like that there. And at a glance that might seem absolutely harmless, it might seem fine, but I'm not just referring to this, I'm referring to attachment to all sorts of things which we may not have been aware of before. We become attached to all sorts of things around us and within inside us, such as philosophies, political beliefs, a job status, a job task within your job. Maybe you feel that you're the best person for that job, and that's your job, that's your baby, and that's why you keep doing it. And whenever somebody else does it, then you feel betrayed, or you feel invaded, almost defiled even. So that's just one example of attachment. Another example of attachment could be to your religion. Maybe you grew up believing a certain faith, following a certain faith, and anytime somebody tries to disprove it or question it in any way, obviously you're going to defend it to the bitter end. So those are examples of everyday attachment. But actually another really fantastic example of attachment and how it can lead you to the dark side can be seen in Star Wars, the prequels. Now, you may or may not be the biggest fan of episodes 1, 2, and 3, but I think they showcase fantastically what can happen when attachment goes to one extreme, and it can, basically has destroyed a man, and his wife, the galaxy ultimately. So with Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars Episode 3, if you know the story, if not, Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one, and he was found by the Jedi at a young age, but he was taken from his family older than what Jedi are normally taken, and basically that resulted in him forming an unusually strong, or a stronger than normal bond with his mother. Normally they're taken at such a young age before a bond is fully formed, but he was taken whenever he had already formed this bond. And I'm not going to go through the whole details now, but whenever he was taken away, he also formed a bond with Natalie Portman's character. It was, I think it was Padme Amidala. I haven't seen Star Wars for a while, but I'll remember what I can. And anyway, he formed these attachments, which over time deepened and deepened and deepened and deepened. And by the age of 20 or so, he was a fully fledged Jedi. Well, still a Padawan, but he was almost a Jedi Knight. And he had developed such attachment that he basically couldn't stand the thought of losing Padme, his wife. Because by the end of by the start of episode 3, he'd actually married her, and he was a full Jedi Knight at that point. But he had these visions, he had these dreams where Padme was going to die at childbirth, and this caused Anakin to feel great fear. It struck fear right into his very soul, and we see it throughout the movie numerous times. But this is where I want to make a distinction. There's a distinction between love and attachment. In episode 2, Padme said, "Aren't the Jedi forbidden to love?" And he said, "Well, actually, no, if anything, we're encouraged to love. We're forbidden from forming attachments." So there's a difference between attachment and love. So attachment is basically where you identify with something, you integrate something, be it a person, an idea, a place, an item, whatever, into part of your being. It becomes part of the ego, so to speak. So whenever it is attached to the ego, the self, you don't want to lose it. The ego doesn't want to lose what it is. The ego doesn't want to be criticized. It doesn't want to have what it has taken away. It doesn't want to be. It basically doesn't want to be diminished, because diminishing the ego, or taking what the ego believes to be its own, is basically death to the ego, and the ego does not want to die. And what this results in is initially fear of losing. So in Anakin's case, he was fearful of losing Padme, his wife, his lover. And then this drove him eventually to anger. For instance, whenever Obi-Wan came to collect Anakin after he had done those terrible things. If you haven't seen the movie, I'll not make any more spoilers. Fear of losing his wife led to anger after actually losing his wife because he thought Obi-Wan took her. And then that anger subsequently led to hate. And then this hate ultimately ended up in suffering whenever he became Darth Vader. Sorry, if you haven't seen it, well, yeah, Anakin became Darth Vader. But you should probably already have known that by now. Anyway, and again, Yoda actually said that as well in, I believe it was the same episode 3 as well. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. So that all stems from attachment. Whereas love, on the other hand, love is where it's not about you, it's not about your ego, it's about the other person. And again, staying with the Star Wars analogy, we can see a comparison, a direct comparison between love and attachment whenever Anakin's mum is being buried at the very end. So Anakin's stepdad, Lars, is it Sigil Lars? The guy Lars, the guy with one leg. Whenever he was saying his final words to his wife, before she was buried, or was she burned? The funeral service. He said, "Goodbye, my darling wife. Thank you." He thanked her. It wasn't about him; it was about her and what she did. Anakin, on the other hand, he said, "I miss you so much," and that seemed totally innocuous to me the first half dozen times I watched the film. And the interesting point is, it's about him. He is missing her. What he had was taken away. And he says similar things throughout the movies with Padme, for instance, or with regards to Padme, such as, "I won't lose you, Padme. I can't lose you, Padme." And he talks about sand. He I can't stand sand, yeah, his course roughly gets everywhere. It's a whole thing. But the point is, it's all about him and his fear of loss. He doesn't want to lose Padme. And then whenever Obi-Wan comes to confront Anakin on Mustafar, he says, "You have taken her from me." Excuse my terrible accent, just or impression. It's an old habit. The point is, he accused Obi-Wan of taking her from him. Again, that's taken from his ego, essentially. So the ego doesn't want to have things taken away from it. The ego doesn't want to be beaten. The ego doesn't want to be diminished. It doesn't want to be destroyed. And it will create fear, hate, anger, suffering, all the above, all negative emotions. And that all stems from attachment. So love is selfless. It's genuine care for the other person. Whereas attachment is all about you. That's essentially the difference. Anyway, we don't just get attached to people. As you probably know, we can get attached to all sorts of things. Like I said before, a bit ideas, philosophies, religions, and lifestyles, all sorts of things like that there. So what we can do about it is, the first thing to do is become aware of any attachments. And sometimes they can be a lot more insidious than you might think. So we could have an attachment, a subconscious attachment to a self-limiting belief based on a previous experience, or something which we've been told before, something we'd heard before, something we learned in school. For instance, for me, I've had many self-limiting beliefs over the years, many attachments to those beliefs which I wasn't really consciously aware of. So I grew up believing that, well, basically that I wasn't good enough really for all sorts of things. I wasn't good enough to pursue the things that I wanted to do. I wasn't good enough to maybe find love. I wasn't good enough to basically have the life that I would like to have had. And it took a long time to get to the point where I could identify these beliefs and actually neutralize them and replace them with beliefs which do serve constructive beliefs. And I can honestly say it makes a hell of a difference whenever you start to remove all this mental garbage, these chains basically holding you back in the form of mental beliefs, subconscious mental beliefs, which you're subconsciously attached to. Whenever you break those chains, you naturally rise to such a higher emotional state. Just you naturally rise. There's a scale of consciousness or emotional states, and it was first illustrated by Dr. David Hawkins in Power versus Force. Fantastic book. I recommend it. And the scale of emotions basically starts at the bottom. In fact, I'll try and superimpose the scale here, so I'll put that in. But it starts at the bottom of the scale, very destructive, very low. So it's basically like despair, grief, apathy, fear, negative emotions. And then at the very top of the scale, it's love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. and then there are lots of other emotions in between. So what I believe is, and what a lot of other people believe, in fact, according to some of the literature as well, a lot of the literature, such as in Power versus Force, and also in The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, whenever you remove these lower emotions, or whenever you become aware of what's holding you down in these lower emotions, you can dissolve them, and by dissolving them, you actually free yourself from being tied to them, and that allows your emotional state, or your sense of well-being, essentially, to rise. So we naturally are in a high energy state. And that's why I always say feeling great is your natural state, because it is your natural state. It's your birthright, essentially. The only reason you don't experience it all the time is because of the stories you tell yourself. You're constantly being bombarded by negative stimuli, stressors, be it at work, be it on the radio, be it on the TV, with the current thing which is going on right now across the world. And this is all just little things bringing you down. You heard the phrase, Rome wasn't built in a day. It isn't one particular thing which brings you down. It's lots of little things, lots of little things. It's little things in life which make the difference, for better or worse. So whenever you become aware of these limiting beliefs, such as, your attachment to the thought that, oh, I'm not good enough for this, or I'm not smart enough for that, or I'm not strong enough for this, or I'll never get this job because of X, Y, and Z. Become aware of those thoughts first of all, and then take a moment to step back and realize they are not you. Those thoughts are not you, they are the ego. There's a lot of confusion as to what the ego actually is. Whenever people think of ego, they automatically think of, oh, that's just pride, that's arrogance, he's got an ego, he loves himself. But that's like a very, very, very small part of it. The way I look at the ego is, it's basically a perceived version of yourself which isn't you. And more specifically, I view it as basically just an amalgamation of all the negativity, all the negative emotions which run rampant in the mind. The ego is what stops you from going out on a limb. It stops you from going out of your comfort zone, basically. It wants to protect you. It wants to protect itself, which can be good at times, such as if you wanted to, say, jump off a preposterously high cliff into really shallow water just to show off. Now the ego might say, well, yeah, it'd be pretty cool to do that, but then also you're going out of your comfort zone here, so maybe not do that. So it's not always a bad thing. There's definitely it's essentially a mechanism for self-preservation. It's to keep you safe, essentially. But by keeping you safe, you're staying in your comfort zone. If you're in your comfort zone all the time, you can't grow. You can't develop. Anyway, so we covered quite a few different things there, and the best way to let go of all limiting beliefs is, like I was saying, just identify any limiting beliefs you have. You can meditate on it. A good way of meditating on it is go into your meditation, but at the very start of your meditation, set the intention of uncovering your limiting beliefs, things that you're attached to, things which don't serve. And it can be as simple as, I intend, just say to yourself, I intend to uncover one limiting belief about myself in this meditation. Something like that there. Just set the intention and then just let it go and see what comes up. Basically like shaking the metal tree, see what falls off, see if any apples fall off. Anyway, the thing is, once you finally identify any limiting beliefs and learn to let them go, it will totally and utterly change the way you view yourself, the way you view your life, the way you conduct yourself throughout your life, and just how good you feel all the time. And you will naturally rise to that high energy state. And it's something that really will work for absolutely everybody, because you're getting high on your own supply. Our natural state is feeling great, and as soon as you get rid of the things holding you down, it's like a hot air balloon. You can only go up. And I hope this video was of some help today. If you have any questions, please post below. I'll reply as soon as I can. And until next time, all the best and take care.